Okay, so thank you everyone for joining us on our CAPS Hangout. We're talking about career tests, what they are and where to get them. I have some different guests here today, Tanya, Shawn, Paula, and Bill, and I'm going to have them each introduce themselves and talk about the service that they're representing and some of the career tests that they offer. So if we could start with Tanya, could you tell us about yourself and the testing services that your organization offers?
Sure. I'm the supervisor in a program called Healthy Families at Bent Arrow. So basically, we work with moms that are either first-time moms or moms that have had child and family services intervention. How we use it is after supporting mom through the process. The testing that I use is career insight testing and the BESI, so the barriers to employment.
Okay. And then Shawn.
Hi, my name is Shawn Bakker. I work at a company called Psychometrics Canada, where I'm one of the psychologists. And our organization actually provides assessments to career counseling, career development specialists. So what actually career counselors use is who we interact with, rather than the actual career seeker or the person making decisions.
Okay. Paula.
Hi there, my name is Paula Wischoff Yerema. I'm a certified career development practitioner, and I've in private practice. I have been in private practice since 2008, and I primarily work with career transitioners, so those folks that are either choosing to transition from employment to a different type of employment, or who due to accident, injury, or illness are forced to transition into something different. So I use a variety of different career tools, some of the ones that Shawn mentioned from Psychometrics, the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, the Strong Interest Inventory, and I've got a whole plethora of other assessment tools in my toolbox depending on what the needs of the individuals that I work with are.
Okay, and Bill. I should mention too, any students watching this is Dr. Hanson. I can get away with this, but you guys can't. So, just so you know.
Well, hello. Good afternoon. Yeah, as she said, my name is Bill Hanson, and I'm a psychologist and professor here at the U of A. And I teach in the Ed.Psych department and work in the educational clinic on campus. And for the last 20 years, I've studied the process of assessment and testing and how it affects people and therapy. And in our whole range of tests. Career, personality, academic and achievement, neuropsych, whatever it might be.
Okay, actually before we move on, some of you might actually have restrictions as to who you can serve. So our major client group here is students. Could you just tell us if you have any restrictions as who you could see if someone contacted you and wanted to get a career test from you? Could I start again with Tanya?
So the restrictions within our program would be I would only be able to provide that service to actual clients signed up in our program.
Okay. So and then Shawn. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Nope. Was there another restriction for your service? You actually have specific clients for your program.
Yeah, so if just anybody called me, I would have to redirect them to another program or another advisor.
Okay, but there's still people who would qualify for your services, and you could make a referral to them so they could enter into your program. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Shawn.
Since we're actually a supplier to career development practitioners, when clients come directly to us looking for career services, we actually make the referral to people that we know working, such as individuals such as Paula or Tanya, depending on the groups that they're serving.
And I understand you have a directory on your website, so would those be people who an individual could contact in their location to get a career test?
Well, we don't have a referral directory on our website, but we do have professionals that we've done work with in the past in cities across Canada, and we will then make the referral to a number of different people who are in the similar location of the individual themselves, depending on the type of work that they're actually looking to, or professional services they're looking for.
Okay, thank you for explaining that, because if I did a search for career test, Psychometrics would probably pop up first, so to know then that I could get the referral from you would be really helpful. So thank you for clarifying. Paula?
The restrictions for me are more around the types of tests that I can offer. So because I'm not a psychologist and because I don't have the qualifications to offer some of the kinds of assessment tools that Dr. Hanson would be offering, there are only certain kinds, so level A, I hope I'm getting this right, level A and level B tools that I'm able to provide. And I certainly only provide assessments that I feel comfortable providing, that I have got the training and the knowledge to be able to assess. So I would refer out to, oftentimes I'm referring to psychologists or neuropsychologists for assessment tools that might be outside of my realm of expertise.
Okay. And Dr. Hanson?
Yes, so we see the whole range, faculty, staff, students, people from the community, whomever it might be. We just have one restriction, mainly because it's a training clinic, and that's court-ordered referrals. We do not do those there.
Okay, no, thank you. That's very helpful. So there's so many different tests that you could possibly take, and most people have heard of the Myers-Briggs, or they may have been suggested to have taken the Strong. They might have come to us and taken the Jacksonville Vocational Interest Survey. But would one of you be able to explain the different types of vocational tests, either personality, aptitude, or interest tests? I'll let you volunteer as to who feels comfortable.
I defer to the psychologists on this one.
Okay. So
I'll just jump in, and others can add to it. You know, one website that's really helpful is the Burrell Institute. It's the Burrell Center for Testing out of the University of Nebraska in Lincoln. And they really break tests down into about 20 different categories. And we know around the world there are literally thousands of tests. But some of the most popular are, like you say, personality, career, and aptitude. And personality tests really are broad-based, and they measure personal, social, and other types of traits. So, for example, introversion, extroversion, impulse control, things like that. Whereas the career tests really get at career maturity, career readiness, values, interests, and so forth. And then the aptitude is about predicting ability to learn in the future, to contrast that with like achievement tests, which are more based on what you've already learned.
Okay, no, thank you. That's very helpful. I think sometimes people just don't know, pardon me, what the test is measuring. So knowing that there's so many different types that could be offered, which tests do you offer to your clients? And if we can start actually with Paula this time.
Sure. So I provide a combination of, based on the descriptions that Dr. Hanson just gave, I provide a combination of personality assessments, career assessments, and some aptitude testing as well. So depending on what the individual would need, if they've been referred to me, they may have been referred for a specific type of assessment, or if they're coming to me saying, I'm not sure what to do, or I'm not sure what direction to go, then I would do a bit of an interview assessment with them to determine which types of assessment tools might be the best fit for them.
Okay. Can I just go back actually to Tanya then?
Basically the same as the lady before me. Depending on the client, I tend to use more of a career decision testing, as well as a combination between aptitude and personality. I kind of varies depending on the client themselves and where they are at.
Okay. Shawn?
Well, I think what Paula and Tanya really touched on was key, that for every person, there's going to be maybe some different assessments that you're going to use. The idea of one set package that's going to fit well for everyone, I think is a little inaccurate, and it doesn't really line up with the provision of professional services. But really, that kind of combination, what would be typical, probably would be starting off with an interest inventory, which in essence looks at what do you like to do, and link you with some jobs that involve those types of activities. Personality would be a little bit more about your typical approach to work, how you like to interact with people, approach your tasks. You can use that to explore some ideal work environments, perhaps. And aptitude assessments are really going to focus on what are some jobs that are going to do things that you're going to be good at, that you might be capable for, that you have some potential with. And in our work with professionals looking to use assessments, our key thing is always what's going to be important to measure. You don't just pick an assessment because you can, but because it's going to provide useful information in your work with that client.
Okay. So if we could ask Dr. Hanson what the assessments are.
Yeah, for us, we're pretty lucky because we do have the full range, as I mentioned before. So we can do intellectual assessment, neuropsych assessment, career, personality, general mental health too. So like symptom-based tests like the Beck Depression Inventory or the State Trait Anxiety Inventory. And then we also do some testing in terms of like strength-based stuff like hopefulness and perceived social support and ethnic identity and other cultural factors that might be assessed.
Okay. So for the viewers that are watching, I hope the message that you get from this is that you might have a test in mind that you think would be suitable, but to work with somebody one-on-one who's a professional, they may give you other suggestions based on culture, background, some of the needs that you have. So just be prepared that they might have different options for you as to what it was you originally expected would be the best choice. So the next question that we have is, how are the tests that you guys offer different from something that I could just go and find online? And we'll start with Dr. Hanson, if we could.
Oh, okay. Well, you know, the majority of tests require some type of professional training, and so those that are online may not. We were talking earlier about different levels, level A, B, and C, and so like level A tests might be more likely to be online, and level C require a PhD or a psychologist accreditation or certification. The thing is, some people can benefit greatly from taking tests online. For example, the self-directed search, it's less than $10 and it can be really, really helpful. But the research I've done shows that by collaborating with another person, with a counselor, a psychologist, whomever, that the benefits are very, very significant. And so it makes some sense to book an appointment with somebody and talk through the results.
Okay. Paula?
I definitely echo what Dr. Hanson had to say. I think one of the key differences between taking something online and working with a professional is that opportunity to debrief, to get some additional insights and information, and to really have somebody work through that information with you. I've myself gone online and taken some of the, you know, kind of quick and dirty assessment tools, and the results have been fine, but I didn't have anybody that I could hash out that information with to help it make sense for my particular situation. So having access to a counselor or a psychologist or a career development practitioner really does, I think, make all the difference when it comes to being able to make sense of that information and to being able to use it in a really productive and effective manner.
Okay, and Shawn?
Well, I think I would liken career counseling, I mean, it is a profession, and we take our cars to mechanics when they break down. Now, there's a few gifted among us that can go buy that handbook from Chapters and actually repair it ourselves, but that's certainly the minority. Instead, it's something that most of us don't have a lot of experience with. It's also a big decision that you're making when you're looking at career planning, and the benefit then of working with counselors who recognize that an assessment is only a part of it, that an assessment can give you some information to start to work with, but it's not going to give you the answer. So if you go online and you expect it's going to kick you the job that's perfect for you, you're going to be sadly mistaken. And that's really the big difference. The do-it-yourself is going to be very hit or miss, and oftentimes can lead to frustration. Working with the professionals who are doing a lot can make sure that the information is interpreted appropriately, that you use it within the limits that it actually can provide, and maybe give you some things to think about that the assessment in and of itself will not be able to do.
Okay. Tanya?
I would have to agree with all of the above. Basically, in my experience, sometimes the clients can have difficulty even interpreting what the question is asking them. So I find that it's really beneficial for them if they have a career counselor or whichever with them if they need further explanation of what the question is asking them, so that you're getting a really honest answer for that question.
Okay. No, I think you've brought something to the fore, this idea that there's a relationship with a person who helps you work through the test. That's really important, that it's just not enough to take something online and expect that to provide an answer. I do like to say that there are some good tests that you probably can use to get started, which is what Dr. Hanson had mentioned. So if you do feel that you want to take a test, you could start with something online as like your intro into that, and then use that as a way for a broader discussion. So who do you feel should take a career test? And is there a particular person that you feel could benefit from career testing? And how about we start with Tanya?
Well, honestly, I think anybody could benefit from a career test. I know I've taken them in the past, especially when I was looking at university, you know, just to get an idea of what fields might be, you know, depending on, you know, what my skills were, what my interests are, what my values are. But mostly, I think most of the people that need these kind of tests are people that are unsure of the direction they'd like to go with their career choice, or unsure of what that career choice might be.
Okay. Shawn?
Yeah, I mean, I'd echo with what Tanya said. Anyone facing some kind of career choice, whether that's you're now in grade 10 and you're considering what courses you might want to study, or you're in your 4th year of university and now you're actually looking at the job market and you're wondering where does that actually take you, or you're someone who's been working in a position for 20 years and looking at some other alternatives. All along that whole work-life stream, assessments can provide some useful information at different times.
Okay. Paula?
I definitely agree with what both Tanya and Shawn have had to say about that. I have experienced occasionally individuals that are really, really clear about what they want to do and what direction they want to go, but want a career assessment, you know, to kind of see if they've missed something or if there are any other options out there. My experience has been that if they're really clear and, you know, determined to go a specific direction, those are the results that they're going to ultimately end up with from those interest assessments. So certainly if there's some level of uncertainty, or if there's a level of unknown in terms of I'm not sure what's out there, maybe you haven't experienced a lot of life at this stage of your life, but you're wanting to kind of explore and examine what types of things might be out there, career assessments can be a really great way to go.
Okay, and Dr. Hanson?
Yeah, I agree completely. I'm not psychoanalytic or psychodynamic, but Freud said, you know, to live a contented and healthy life, we need to love and to work. And career issues are complex and they're common. The majority of people experience some type of a career issue throughout their lifespan, so all the way up until retirement and beyond. And so meeting with a professional can be very, very helpful for most people. In fact, if the middle part of the normal curve, that middle 68% of people are the ones who can benefit the most from testing. It's not always just the extremes. And we get the most variability there in the middle, so we can really tailor it to each individual person.
Okay. For people who are watching, you can also consider you don't have to be young. Like, to take a test is obviously not, you don't have to, because you're 25 and older, that you would never take a test again. I think you can see from some of our experts here that it's common. So if you're struggling with these issues, even much later on in your life, that you could feel comfortable coming to take a career test that will help you. And I think everybody who's on the panel can also agree that at the last assessment, if we go by the National Occupation Classification, there was over 8,000 potential job titles listed, and that didn't include any of the newer jobs that are coming out, like maker, nanotechnologist, apps developer. So the world of work keeps changing, and there might be more options that are unveiled if you take a test. So I want to thank everybody for giving that analysis, and be encouraged. Even if you're not in high school, you can still take a test. So I decide to take a test, and I come to you for the test that you offered. What's the process like? do I need to do any preparation? Is there something I should bring with me? How should I prepare? And I think if we could start actually with Shawn.
I think that idea of what do you need to bring with you and what do you need to prepare, certainly for the vast majority of career assessments, there shouldn't be anything particular that you do need to bring or any preparation that you would have to actually be involved in. So for example, bringing a dictionary. We know there's translations of many different assessments into someone's first language. And given the way language works and the interpretation of terms, it's very important then to administer the assessment in a language of someone's choice. And I mean, that's going to be a key thing that all professionals are going to do first, is determine what does my client need, what assessment's going to work well, are there any kind of different options that I might need to look at. So for the vast majority of them, there's not really preparation needed, other than perhaps be honest with yourself, in essence, because that's what we're looking for.
Sure. Tanya?
I'd have to agree with Shawn. Basically, we bring everything to them because we go into the family's homes. We bring everything with him. Preparation, there isn't any really.
Okay. You might not actually have the answer to this, but just with the client group that you have, do you know if there's any translation into Aboriginal languages to do a variety of career tests?
Not as far as I know. They do have them in a range of other languages, but as for Aboriginal, not to my knowledge.
Okay. But more than likely they could receive them at least in French and English if that's what they requested.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, if they requested that, then we would bring out their language preference.
Okay. I don't think people are aware of the range, because you could locally get a test here, French, English, Spanish, Korean, and simplified Chinese, I believe, is just even the basics. But one of you, maybe you can tell me a much wider range. Paula, what about preparation that you expect from your clients?
Sure, no real preparation other than the ability and the time to sit down and do that initial kind of interview to determine which assessments might be best. And then in terms of preparing to actually do the assessment, it could be an online assessment, it could be a pen and paper sitting in an office assessment. We would set all of that up ahead of time, and I always just encourage the individuals that I'm working with to be in their best frame of mind when they do the assessment. So if they're going to be doing a career interest assessment, you know, to be kind of in a relatively good space, not having just had a fight with their boss or something like that, which could potentially really skew their results. So that kind of preparation would be the real, you know, making sure that they have time to actually work through the assessment and not be distracted, those kinds of things. But beyond that, no studying necessary.
Okay, and Dr. Hanson?
Yeah, it's it varies a little bit in terms of what they're coming in for and the type of testing that's being done regarding the overall process. And I like to see people 3 or 4 times and then have a separate testing situation, but that's not always feasible. So maybe they could commit to 3 or 4 sessions over a month or two, and in that first session, they're usually pretty active. I like them to be anyway, in terms of coming up with personal questions they have and things they would like to learn from the testing, and then exploring the background factors related to those questions. And what I find is that enhances their kind of test-taking attitude, and so they're more likely to answer honestly and candidly across the board.
Okay, so no one has to do homework. That's later. Okay. So what do I do with my results? You guys give me my results, so what happens? If I could have Shawn start this time.
Well, I think that's where the homework then comes in, Christine. That the assessment results, I mean, I often liken it just to a starting part of a conversation. You mentioned there's 8,000 jobs listed in the NOC. To expect that assessment's going to pick the one for you, it's not going to work. But instead, many of the assessments, probably the more common ones anyways, could be used for people to start to identify some themes. What are some areas within that world of work that they might find more rewarding to target or to mine? Some other avenues that they could continue to explore. And in some ways, a set of scales that as they start to look at their career options based on now what they know about themselves, which ones are going to be a better fit in terms of their interests, what they're capable of, and how they'll like to go about doing their day, which we know really lines up with this idea of career satisfaction. And what other ones might they say, you know what, that job sounds great, I like the idea of the income that it might provide, but every hour of my day is going to line up with something that's actually counterintuitive for me. Maybe they're better off exploring something different then.
Okay. Paula.
Yeah, definitely. It's absolutely a place to start. I don't think that a career assessment should ever be the be-all, end-all. I don't want my clients to take their report away and never have that time to chat with me or another professional, or to do some further research into the occupations that perhaps have come up as being potential good fits for them. So taking into consideration things like what's going on in their personal and family lives, what their goals for education or training are, what's important to them in terms of earning requirements and hours of work, all of those sorts of things. So really taking that information and then expanding it into the world of work and what's accessible in the labor market, and then trying to make some of those connections and really helping people to understand what the reality of the world of work is. It's one thing to read an occupational profile. It's something completely different to go and talk to people that are working in the field and finding out what a true day at work looks like and what the expectations might be. So just really using it as that conversation and research starting place.
Okay, and Dr. Hanson.
Yeah, I want them to think about it, to process it, and to talk to people, their friends, their family, their peers, and get out there and explore. I think that's the key word, just explore possibilities and options.
Okay, and Tanya, what do people do with the results that you give them?
Okay, so when I give them the results, I have a conversation with them about the different career clusters that may have come up of interest for them. What I do then is give them what I call a career investigation report. So I want them to go away, think about the results, look into the occupations under those clusters, and research at least 3 of those occupations that they're interested in. So just like the previous people were saying, I want you to go out and talk to somebody that actually works in that field. Get a rundown on what their daily workload is like. Get a feel for if this is actually a job you'd want to do every day.
Yep, I think those are all great points. This idea, though, that you guys keep coming back with this relationship, because I think people are so confused, and there is so much information that if you do work on one-on-one in this testing relationship, in the sort of the therapeutic relationship, you still have somebody to come back and talk to. So if you had hoped that this would be the fast food of careers, that you could just buy a little burger, this is not going to be the solution necessarily, but for people who have realized this choice is really complex, taking a career test, I think, is going to bring you into a wider relationship with someone else who can guide you, and that's actually kind of difficult to find. Okay, so when we've taken the career test, what information does this test give you about the person who actually took it? And if we could actually go back and start with Tanya.
For me, it kind of lets me know, what barriers they might be facing, their interests, their values, the way they view work in general, what their ethics around working might be.
Okay, and Shawn.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost a hard question to answer because every assessment gives so many different kinds of information about people. Whether some of it is their readiness to search for a career. For others, it can be as simple as, what are the things you like to do? And then there's a mix of different depths in there as well. But in general, I would say that the information, and this is why I think professionals are so important, because they're going to pick the ones that are actually going to help you better answer the questions and the needs that you have, rather than pick it off a list, find it on the internet based on what you think might work for you. You may actually be kind of barking up the wrong tree.
Okay, Paula.
I find oftentimes with career assessments, they're really affirming for people. I've been thinking about this, or this has been on my radar, and I'm just not quite sure if it's a good fit for me. So oftentimes you get that affirmation that, oh, I am on the right track, and yes, those are strengths and skills that I have. And other times it can be quite enlightening, like, oh my gosh, I did not realize that about myself. You know, they'll start to see themes that they hadn't recognized before. So it really is going to be different for every individual, but almost always it is a positive personal development kind of activity.
Okay, and Dr. Hanson?
It can be very, very validating, like Paula said, and eye-opening for some people. And we've pretty much covered it. You know, what the clients like, what's important to them, what they like to do, how they're doing in general, in terms of their overall mental health and well-being. It can give us a sense of their inner thoughts and feelings, and then potentially identify really good fits for them career-wise that they'll find very satisfying long-term.
Okay. No, I think that's all really helpful for people to consider. So if you take a career test, do not expect that they can sort of see into your soul as to what you would expect, but I think that they can help you get some direction and refinement that you might not have expected. I like the point that everybody talked about with affirming, because we do hear sometimes from clients is I took a test and it didn't match with anything that I had ever thought. But that might be a good thing because it's opening you up to new possibilities or opportunities, and you shouldn't necessarily discount those because maybe you just don't know what that job is about. But for other people, you could finally get the permission, I guess you need, to pursue something you thought is a possibility but didn't know if you could do it or not, that it would work for you. So what other uses are there for career tests? So I know that some career tests are given in corporate settings so they can assign employees to specific teams or groups. Dr. Hanson had referred that there might be some court-appointed tests. There might be other places that you'd encounter a career test. So if you could talk about that, like other aspects of those things, that would be wonderful. Could I start with Tanya again, actually?
I'm sorry, I just zoned right out. What was the question?
What other uses are there for career tests? So it's not just deciding what job you could take, but maybe they might use a career test to put you in a different role in your work or something else like that.
Well, for our purposes, I also use it to help support my clients that are looking at taking education. So to qualify for most funding, you need to have an idea of what kind of career field you want to go into. These testing help the client establish, which program they may need in order to work in that field. It allows us to help support them better at looking at programs that will get them there.
Okay, Shawn. Shawn and actually Dr. Hanson have probably seen a wide range of different types of tests employed in many ways, but if you have any comment on this one, we'd appreciate hearing it. So, Shawn.
Sure. I really think the vast majority of career assessments, they're designed to help people make career decisions, and they're used primarily in that sphere. I know in our work with organizations that use career assessments, it's never for the building of teams or the evaluation of skill, but instead it's more for the ongoing development of the individual, an exploration of values and a consideration of where they might want to go with their future career, rather than it is trying to match people together. I think if you look at organizational assessments, there's a whole other host of different assessments that would, for the most part, do that better. And so rather than trying to work with a career assessment that in essence isn't going to be very valid, is I guess what a psychologist would call it, pick something else that's different. So, for example, the strong interest inventory measures what do you like to do. It's helpful for pointing you in directions of things that you might like to do. It's not a measure of what you're good at. And if you're looking to put together a high-performance team at work, you want to know what are people actually good at. And the strong is not going to get you there.
Okay. Paula.
Sure. So I would use career assessments certainly for individual career development work, and as Tanya had mentioned as well, for determining kind of fit for education. So oftentimes I'll have people come to me that have very limited education and they have been displaced from their employment due to accident, injury, or illness. And so some of those assessments are about determining if they would be a good fit for further education or training and what level of education or training that might be. And we do use the personality assessments occasionally for team development kind of activities, not setting up teams, but more when you've got a team together and maybe they are not working together as effectively as they could, and there's something going on, or they want to recognize the strengths that each member brings to the team. We can use personality assessments to help sometimes in those capacities as well, which helps from an individual career development perspective as well as from a team development perspective.
Okay. Dr. Hanson, and I do also want to mention too, and I think Dr. Hanson can speak to this, that some people are actually asked to take what appears to be a vocational aptitude test to determine if they could go to graduate school. So we're talking about educational assessments. I don't know if you want to talk to that as well as the other uses for career tests.
That's a real hot button issue, the idea of using like the GRE and ACT and their predictive value. But as Shawn was saying, the key here is using tests in terms of what they were designed to measure. And so the validity issue, and these tests, the majority of them are intended to enhance personal growth and development. So it's really important to use them for those purposes. One way I've seen career tests used, some of them anyway, in organizations is to get at core and common values that cut across the staff. And so, I could see that being used, tests being used that way, but you have to be pretty careful too in terms of how you use them. Okay,
so unnamed Fortune 500 company that is using career tests to put people into different groups, we're skeptical of you.
Yeah. Just a side note.
Yes.
I went to the University of Minnesota, and in the 80s, you had to take the MMPI and the Strong Interest Inventory as part of your admission process. They don't do that anymore. It's illegal.
Oh, that's actually interesting to hear that the legislation has changed in that case. I'm sure that that's a very complex topic. We probably won't get into that one here, but they could. It's an area to explore. So really quickly, if one of you or even two of you have the answer to this, we actually found a job called Psychometrician, where a person could actually work in this field where they would deliver tests throughout the day. Could you, any of you, tell me a little bit more about this job if I was interested? Like, what would be the educational requirements? Is there something I should do while I'm here at school? What would I do if this is what I thought I wanted to do with my career? I'll let anyone take this one. Oh, everyone's too scared to talk about being a psychometrician.
We're all looking at Dr. Hanson.
I didn't know. I thought, Shawn, is that your background?
Well, sure. I can take a stab at it. And so I think there's often confusion around that term psychometrician between someone who actually does the research and the statistics behind the evaluation of psychological traits versus someone who actually administers assessments. So we used to call them, what were they, psychological associates or something like that. And so psychologists would hire individuals who would administer the assessments, the psychologists would provide the interpretation. And so that was one kind of common term for psychometrician. But the other one, which is a very different job, is actually heavily involved in research and uses a lot of mathematics and statistics to measure how well do these things actually work, how can we make them better, its item evaluation and so forth. And if you'd like to follow that path, well, you can go to R.Psych, and they actually have a department that can put you well on the way.
Yes, yeah, we have a master's program in that, and it varies depending on where you're living in terms of your country and your province or your state in the U.S. The level of education required. For some, it's a bachelor's, some it's a master's, and then you can actually get a PhD in psychometrics. And it really focuses on measurement theory and technique and like Shawn was saying, test construction and item development. And it's a fascinating and, I'll add, highly, highly lucrative job to have.
Okay, so if people are interested in this field, you can contact us for more information, and we can see if we can set you up with an undergraduate research project or make some directions on campus if that's what you're interested in. Did anyone else have something to add on that subject before we go to our last question? No? Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to mention about career tests, like maybe a common concern of clients that come to approach you if they might be hesitant or have some concerns? And if we could start with Tanya again.
I guess the only thing that I have noticed is some of our immigrant clients Even though the testing you can get in different languages, it's still the comprehension of the question. So at times I've had to go out to the families and sort of just restate the question in a way so that they can understand what's being asked in order to answer it. That's about the only thing that I've noticed.
Okay. Shawn?
I think of the 4 people here, I'm probably the least useful to answer this question because I don't actually work with clients as much. From a assessment development side of things, of course, one of our concerns is making sure that in general, is it something that people can understand and work with? And
okay. Paula?
Sure. I think one of the big things, a lot of people come to me expecting that I can give them a test that will give them an answer, the answer that will answer all of their career questions and just give them a direction and it won't require a lot of work. And I always love and hate to burst their bubble when they come to me with those kinds of expectations, because the reality is it is just it's a tool, it's a piece of a process, and a very valuable and important piece of a process, but certainly there is a lot of hard work that the client is going to need to do to be able to make those results really work for them. And so I just think it's important that we remind people of the individual work that they're going to need to do with respect to those career assessments, that there is no test that you can take that will tell you what your ideal job is.
Okay, and Dr. Hanson?
Yeah, I agree. It's people come in believing that there's something magical about it, and we have to keep in mind that tests and test scores are fallible, there's error there, and that really the bottom line for me is that it's a process, and so one that you want people to commit to. And what I found is over time, if you do the assessments a certain way, by, like I said, asking clients about personal questions they want answered, and I also like to ask them about times where they've taken tests and it didn't go so well, maybe when they were hurt by it, by the process, and then we discuss that and work that into what we're doing. And it's interesting because we'll have people come in and say, well, I just want the test, and then I went out. I went out right away. And when we start to educate them about the process, they end up staying for 8, 9, 10 sessions sometimes, and changing all aspects of their life, which is really positive.
Okay. No, that's really great to know. Now, to sum up for everybody, I want to make sure that people, if they're interested in you and the service that they offer, that they can get in touch with you. So Tanya Behm is with Bent Arrow Traditional Healing Society. That's correct. If you go to the CAPS website, we do have a link to their website plus their Twitter account if you want to go and check them out, so just so you're aware. We have Shawn Bakker with Psychometrics. Now, as he mentioned, he doesn't give the tests himself, but you could go through their website if you're curious to see some of the options that are available for you, just the choices. That would be something that you could access on your own. Paula, I know her because we're in the same professional association. Which would you like to give a brief shout out to them so that they know about the membership directory there?
Yes, absolutely. So if you're looking for anyone to provide career and employment services, depending on age range, background, occupational preferences, we've got individuals that are members of the Career Development Association of Alberta that serve people of all different backgrounds. And so you can access a professional directory on the front page of careerdevelopment.ab.ca if you're looking for different kinds of services that might be available throughout Alberta.
Okay. And for people who are watching, if you aren't in Alberta, you can probably find your own professional association, whether that's provincial or state, and they can make referrals that way for you. And then Dr. Hanson, we found him through the Educational Psychology Testing Clinic. Is that correct? That's the correct name? If I type that into Google, I'd find you, or your service?
More than likely, yeah. But so it's through the Department of Educational Psychology, and then there's a separate educational and psychological clinic that's on the main floor of Education North, that building.
Okay. So I want to thank everybody for coming to join us, and for people who are watching, our next Hangout is actually going to be next week on July 22nd, and this one's going to be for parents supporting your student's career. So if you want to watch that one live, it will be at 2 p.m. I hope at 2 p.m. on July 22nd. Again, I want to thank everybody for tuning in to watching it, and it will go up live on our YouTube channel. So thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Christine.
Yep.
Thank you.